Right. And would you tell us what happened on that occasion? First of all, when was that? That was in the first time we were dating, so I wasn't driving yet. And was that a daytime date? You had a date to see him on a Saturday afternoon? It was just a Saturday afternoon. When we were dating, I didn't have a car, and he finally had his license, so when we dated, it was on weekends. And so this particular weekend, it was a Saturday afternoon, and my mom dropped me off over at his house, and he was supposed to be there. I knew he was going to work out in the morning, but he was supposed to be there. And Kitty said that they were still up at the high school practicing. So she drove me up to the high school, and I waited for them while they finished their practice. And who was practicing at the high school? Eric and Lyle were hitting, and Jose was coaching. And what did you observe by way of Mr. Menendez's coaching? He was standing right behind Eric, yelling at him, basically. Lyle was feeding him out of a ball hopper, and they were out there, both of them, with their shirts off at the high school courts, drilling each other. And Jose was just telling him to move his feet, and he was being really sarcastic. And I was standing there in my street clothes on top of the Mercedes, waiting for the workout to finish because we were supposed to go out to a matinee, and their workout took forever. So, when you said that Mr. Menendez was very sarcastic, who was he aiming those sarcastic remarks at? Eric. Eric was still competing in the junior tournaments. Lyle was at Princeton. He was done with that. So, and was the kind of instruction that Mr. Menendez was giving to Eric, in your opinion, as a competitive tennis player, constructive? No. It was, I would never play well if someone were yelling at me, behind me, belittling, sarcastic comments. I mean, when your coach is coaching you, they say, move your feet and racket back, and they say, and give you constructive criticism, but this was more like hounding. You better do this, play well, you're playing a tournament, you've got to practice like you play, and like that, And what, I was embarrassed for him. You were embarrassed for Eric? Yeah, I was. I was embarrassed to be there watching that. And how did Eric respond to these things that his father was saying to him? He moved his feet faster and hit the ball harder and tried harder and grunted louder and didn't say a word. So, and did you ever see Eric talk back to his father? No. And did you see during this practice that Eric did whatever it was his father told him to do? Yes. Did you get to go on the date with Eric that afternoon? I was PO'd. No. What happened? Well, what happened? How did your observation of this tennis drill come to an end? Jose came off the court and said that they were going to be a little while longer, and why don't you use the car phone to call your dad, and I'll drive you halfway so he doesn't have to come all the way out here and pick you up. So did you have an opportunity at all to talk to Eric? No. To say goodbye? We just looked at each other. We didn't talk to each other. I mean, he knew we were supposed to go out, but I just sat on the top of the hood of the Mercedes and watched him practice until Jose came out and said that. That was the only time I had ever driven in the car by myself with Jose. So he drove me, and I met my dad halfway. Now, when you had gotten to the house, you were originally supposed to meet Eric at the Calabasas rented house. Right, the one on the lake. The one on Park Livorno was the street, Livorno. And there was like a man-made lake behind that house. Right. And behind the whole development, right? Right. Now, did Mrs. Menendez appear to be expecting you when you got there? She knew we were supposed to go out, yeah. I knew he was working out at the club in the morning, at the high school in the morning, and so I thought he would be already back and showered and ready to go. And she said he was still up at the high school if you want to see him. And she drove you to the high school. She dropped me off. It's just around the corner. Did she say anything to her husband or to Eric about finishing up so you could keep your date? She just dropped me off. Now, the next time that Was there another occasion when something similar happened? It was during the second time that we were dating, when he lived in Beverly Hills now. And did you have an evening date with him when he was living in Beverly Hills? Uh-huh. And were you driving at that time? Right. And did you drive in from Thousand Oaks to his house in Beverly Hills? Yes. And were you supposed to go out at a particular time? Right. And had you called before you left your home? I called to tell him that I was leaving my house and that I should be there if the traffic wasn't bad in about 45 minutes. And did you speak to Eric directly? Right, yes. And did he indicate to you at that time that he was practicing, but that he'd be ready when you got there? Right. And what happened when you got there? I hit serious traffic and I was really late. It took more like an hour and a half, and I got there and he was still on the court playing. I asked Kitty where he was, and he was in the backyard playing with Ed. Playing with Ed Fido? Right. And was his father there? Yes. And what was his father doing on that occasion? Same type of thing, just coaching him. And he was standing behind them while they were playing points. He was standing behind them on the tennis court, behind the baseline, against the fence, but not to be in, not to be in the point, He's inside the fence though. He's not looking from outside. He's on the back side of the fence, behind the baseline, just kind of pacing, watching him. Inside the court though, inside the court, right. And was he, on that occasion also, making sarcastic remarks at Eric? Same kind of coaching. It wasn't as much as it wasn't as much as I've seen before. But I think it was because both Ed and I were there. I mean, right when I walked in, Jose said, hi, how are you doing? So he saw you? Yeah. And you understood Ed was a friend of Lyle's, not a relative? Right. And Lyle Menendez wasn't there on that occasion, was he? No. So when you got there and this was going on, did the training stop so that you could go on your date? No. It went for a little bit longer, so I went in the house and I visited with Kitty. And was there a plan that you and Eric had for where you were going to go on that particular date? We were supposed to go dancing. And did Mrs. Menendez do something to assist you in going dancing? I wasn't yet 18, and Eric was. And we really wanted to go to an 18 and over club. We both really wanted to go dancing. And Eric had this piece of paper because his license was revoked that had his name and birthday on it. Let me stop you. Was this a piece of paper from the Department of Motor Vehicles? Right. It was a temporary license. License? Right. He had gotten his other license. He was waiting for his picture. He was waiting for the picture license. He had a paper license at that point. Right. So did Mrs. Menendez do something with that paper license? We went upstairs together and she said, well, I can make you 18 for the evening and you can both go. And that's what we had planned. I wanted to see if I could get in on another friend's ID. And she said, use this one. And we went upstairs and they had a photocopy machine in her bedroom. And she added an A and made it Erica Menendez. I assumed we couldn't go as twins, the same birthday. So then she changed the month. So she came up with an altered version of that license for you to use, Eric and Erica Menendez. So there were two licenses now. One said Eric and one said Erica. I didn't think it would work, but we had it. So was it your idea to change that piece of paper, or was it Mrs. Menendez's? No, I was a little nervous about it, but it was her idea? Right. Now, Ms. Smith, you were very fond of Mrs. Menendez, were you not? Uh-huh. And did she treat you nicely? Yes. And can you describe the first time that you actually met her? Did you go on a date with Eric where you wound up staying overnight at his house? The first time I met her? Yes. I didn't stay the night at the house the first time I met her. Do you remember the first time you ever hugged her? The first time I met her, during the first time we dated, Eric brought me to his house. I had never seen his house on the lake, and I shook her hand when I walked in, and she smiled and we talked for a while. And then Eric and I were going to go out to a movie or whatever. And I hugged her and I said, it was very nice meeting you. When you hugged her, did you see something? Did you see an expression on Eric's face? Eric kind of raised his eyebrows and looked at me, and we walked out. And when we got to the car, he said, I can't believe you hugged my mom, something like that, And I was like, why? I thought it was because I had just met her, And he goes, I don't even do that. And did he say anything about it not being done in the family? He said, I don't even do that. We don't do that. We don't do that, meaning in his family. He said, we don't do that. I thought it was because I was being too close or something, because I shook her hand when I came in and I hugged her when I left. Now, you saw Eric interacting with his mother during the times that you dated him? Uh-huh. How did he treat his mother? Very well. Was he nice to her? Uh-huh. Kind to her? Yes. And was his mother generous towards Eric when he was dating you, that you noticed? Did she give him a lot of money so that he could spend it on you? Whenever we would leave for a date, she always asked him if he had enough money, and he would say yes, and then she'd slip him another $20 and say, treat her right, And then we'd go to dinner and a movie, usually. 184, boys. For 5 minutes, we're starting off with direct examination by defense attorney, Mr. Atherton, Atherton. Plaintiff's attorney, this one is Mr. Dordulian, Dordulian. Mr. Tyler, Tyler. Deputy Public Defender, William Abrone, Abrone. Henry McKinley, MC, capital Kinley. Larry Gurley, Gurley. Mother, stepmother, father, grandmother. Mr. Abrone. Okay. 180, question by defense. Ready? Good afternoon, Mr. Tyler. Good afternoon. Mr. Tyler, what is your occupation and profession, sir? I am employed by Los Angeles County as a deputy public defender. And on July 8 of this year, what was your assignment? I was assigned at that time, I'm in training. It was a month in my training. And what building were you assigned to? Criminal Courts Building. Was it this building we're in right now? Yes, okay. And in your capacity as a deputy public defender, were you familiar with the case of People versus William Abrone, Henry McKinley, and Larry Gurley? Yes. And on July 8, 1998, were you present either in the courtroom or just outside the courtroom when the preliminary hearing had been continued? Yes, both inside and outside. And did you have an opportunity to see an individual by the name of Martinez? Yes. Do you know who he is? I didn't at the time. In relation to this case? Yes. Who do you know him to be? He was the person who was robbed. Okay. And can you identify the person when you see him? Yes, probably. Okay. When you were outside in the hallway, did somebody try to get your attention? Yes, they did. Who was that? The Gurley family. I believe it was his mother or stepmother, his father and grandmother. Okay. How did they get your attention? They told me to come over here. Objection, hearsay, Your Honor. Now that's one of the operative facts, just that they called you to come over to where they were. Yes, okay, go ahead. But when you got over there to where, did you go over to where they were? Yes. Was he in the group of people that was there? Yes. What happened when you got there? They told me, they said, listen to what he has to say. Who are they referring to when they said, listen to what he has to say? I am not sure exactly the name of the person. I cross-referenced it with my file at the time, but right now they didn't refer to him as Mr. Martinez. They said this person, this is the guy that was robbed. So when you were listening to this, you believed that that was the person who was the victim of the crime? Yes, I asked him a couple questions to make sure. Did you verify in your own mind that he was who you thought was the victim of the crime? Yes, okay. Did he make a statement? Yes, he did. What did he say? He said that guy is not the one that robbed me. He's much taller. And he was referring to, I thought, Mr. Gurley, because Mr. Gurley was about 6'5". So were those his exact words, the best you can remember? Exact words, something around like that. Okay, so his statement was, Mr. Gurley was not the man that robbed me. Wait a minute, did he use his name? No, he did not. Let's not do that, okay? You can repeat the statement and ask him if that was what it was, but don't change the statement, okay? The statement was, that guy is not the guy that robbed me, right? And you didn't ask him if he was referring to Mr. Gurley or Mr. Abrone. I didn't refer to them by names. I referred to them by or what he was wearing, what was he wearing at the time. And he identified, they said he had different colors on, I think. Which one did he identify was the one he was talking about, Mr. Gurley? And how do you know that? Through the entire conversation, like he talked about how tall the guy was. Mr. Gurley was 6'5". The other two gentlemen were shorter than I was, and I am 5'11", so it was clear. And I think he talked about the person standing next to me. We were all standing up against the wall, so it was pretty clear to me he was referring to Mr. Gurley. You did that by deducing it? Yes, asking a couple of questions. Which guy? You know, I don't remember the exact conversation, but there was something I did to make sure we were talking about the same person. Now, if he were to testify, sir, that he didn't make that statement, that the statement that he made was that Mr. Gurley looked different than he did in court, than he did on the date he was attacked, would that be correct? No, it would not. Are you certain about that? Yes. And are you certain, sir, that he said that this individual, who you believed was Mr. Gurley, was not the man that robbed him? Yes, I am certain. Okay. I don't have anything further. Sir, I have no further questions. And thank you. People, very quickly, this incident that you are talking about occurred initially. You were inside of a courtroom, is that right? Yes. The 160. We are starting off with cross-examination by plaintiff's attorney. Plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Dordulian. D-O-R-D-U-L-I-A-N. Defense attorney is Mr. Atherton. A-T-H-E-R-T-O-N. Mr. Gurley. G-U-R-L-E-Y. Mr. Lee, L-E-E. Mr. Tyler, T-Y-L-E-R. Mr. Abrone, A-B-R-O-N-E. Willie, W-I-L-L-I-E. Okay, ready? 164 voice for 5 minutes. Starts with cross by plaintiff's attorney. This incident that you are talking about occurred initially. You were inside of a courtroom, is that right? Yes. And this person named Mr. Gurley was brought out, is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Isn't it true that basically they were put against the wall, their backs against the wall? Yes. If we can just envision a courtroom, they would be standing against the wall, looking straight over to the judge. Is that correct? Yes. So if we were in this courtroom, they would probably be over there against the wall, looking over to the judge, straight across from the judge? Yes. Right, okay. Now, do you know where the person that you were talking to, where he was seated? No, I do not. At no point did the person, Mr. Gurley, move away from that wall. Did he accept to go back in? To be honest, I don't really recall. I knew we were kind of bunched in a corner because there was 3 people. There was 3 individuals and 3 attorneys. So we were kind of bunched in the corner. I don't know. I don't know if his back was against the wall the whole time. Do you remember if he was the one closest to the audience or the one further away from the audience? I think he was furthest away. This is Mr. Gurley? Yes. Now, you said at some point you went outside and you heard a statement. Is that correct? Yes. Do you remember the exact words? The exact words? No. Okay. Wasn't it true that, in essence, he was telling the people he was talking to about differences that he felt were involved between the person he saw in court and versus the day of the attack, differences in maybe height or appearance? Yes. And that's what he was talking about. Isn't that true? Yes. And isn't it also true that he said at that time that he is absolutely certain the other 2, referring to the defendants here in court, were the robbers? Yes. He said, I'm certain those other 2 are them. Thank you. Nothing further. This courtroom that he has been talking about, is that division 34 or 36? I don't remember. Do you remember? Do you remember if that courtroom that you were in was the same size as this courtroom here, or is it bigger? I believe they are similar. The smaller? Okay. And are you absolutely certain that he said that, referring again to who you thought was Mr. Gurley, that he was not the person that robbed him? Yes. Okay. Nothing further. No further questions. What was the statement about height, Mr. Tyler? I am not sure I caught that. He said that guy is much taller than the guy that robbed me, meaning Gurley is taller than the guy that robbed me, right? Okay. Anything further? Just so we're clear. He was never referring to the 2 defendants here in court? No. When he referred to the 2 defendants here in court, he said those guys were the ones that robbed him. Isn't that correct? Yes. Thank you. Nothing further. Nothing further. No questions. Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Good luck to you. I understand you're needed downstairs for a jury. Good luck to you. Thank you. Okay. You may call your next witness. On behalf of Mr. Abrone, Your Honor, we rest. I am sorry. We rest on behalf of Mr. Abrone. Okay. And Willie? Your Honor, at this time, he will rest on the state of the evidence. All right. You have any rebuttal evidence? No, Your Honor. Thank you. People rest. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got a little bit more to do on the jury instructions. Okay? So that will probably take me 15 or 20 minutes. So why don't we give you 25 minutes? You can stay in the jury room, or you can kind of wander around if you want and get something to drink at the snack bar. Take a look at the weather. If you would, come back at 10 minutes to 3 by that clock over on that wall, and we'll try to resume at that time. When you leave the courtroom, please don't come back in because we will be doing business while you're gone, okay? You're admonished as usual not to discuss this case or allow anyone to form any opinion on it. See you about 10 minutes to 3. All right, back on the record, the jury has left the courtroom. It seems to me, with regard to a lesser included offense of grand theft from a person, that there was no testimony that would lend credence to that.